you've seen, or something that, and if it is, how did you kind of address it?
Yeah, old habits die hard, right? I mean, I think unless you change the incentive model, the teams are still conservative in their estimation, and and you say, okay, this is how much I think I'm going to need, but then I'm going to add a buffer on top of that, and I'm going to plan for the peak hour of the peak day of the peak month, and so you end up over capacitizing, over provisioning infrastructure, and I think this is where we have to also change that incentive model, right? Make sure that teams understand that it's not just okay, but it is important for them to look at and test the boundaries of how far changing utilization impacts performance, right? And so we do tend to use cost as a shorthand, and I think you and I have spoken about this before, right? There's like, oh, there's a cost initiative. It really isn't a cost initiative. Cost is just a nice way to understand your utilization,
That's right.
and really, increasing utilization obviously lowers cost, but you have to look at how it impacts performance. And so, when we talked about this, if you can put those three things side by side and say, these are the areas where we've extracted the most amount of cost, and increase utilization to a reasonable amount without affecting performance, or one of the things that I've seen as a side effect from getting people to be curious and think about it, right? So how do you make sure that you're incentivizing them to go look at that data, and be obsessed with the data on, maybe not everyone, but at least a few people on each team should be looking at how is my system using the infrastructure? Where are the bottlenecks? If I try to increase utilization and I see performance being impacted, I made a very small change here and my performance impact was huge.
Yeah.
How do I kind of get that to be what people are curious about, and that's why I think incentivizing efficient use of infrastructure, and giving them permission, and sometimes it's just knowing that they have permission to experiment and do it in a sensible way, right? So of course try to avoid experimenting in production, but in some cases it's okay if you've got a scale out architecture, scale it down, and if you see something going wrong, if you've got good instrumentation, you can immediately scale it back up in seconds. So give people that permission to say, I'm not going to fire you if we have an outage. Of course, if you're sloppy, that's a whole different thing. But if you've done your due diligence and you have a strong conviction, and you've done your homework in making sure that you're going to do, be careful about making that change, it's okay to have a hiccup along the way, right?